As many of you know, I'm a fanboy of the United States of America. We have our warts, and sometimes democracy is messy and noisy. But today is Election Day 2020, November 3rd, and I am excited, not dismayed. I'm excited for a couple of reasons. One is that this will be the highest participation rate of American citizens voting for the President of the United States in the history of the country. Now, let that sink in for a minute. The American people, as a people, are totally energized around who they want to run the country. Regardless of the arguments for and against, just the fact that the population is that energized is a good thing. There are countries where the only reason that you vote is that if you don't, you go to jail. That is not the case here. However, the history of voting in this country hasn't always been, let's just say it's been a journey. Let's go to 1776, when the country was born, right? Most of us know that voting in general was controlled by the states, individual state legislatures, and that's still kind of the way it is. But only white men aged 21 and older who had land. So you had to be landed gentry, and those are the only people that could vote. Period. That was in 1776. It was almost 100 years later, 1868, that the 14th Amendment, that's the 14th Amendment, right, granted full citizenship rights and right to vote to all men born or naturalized in the United States. So it went from landed male, white male gentry to all men who are citizens or naturalized, whether or not they have land, uh, allowed them to vote. That's almost 100 years later, 1868. Then 2 years later, the 15th Amendment. Now, these are two constitutional amendments almost back to back. So there was a lot of energy about voting and voting rights even back then. But the 15th Amendment, that's 1870, eliminated racial barriers. 1870, 15th Amendment eliminated racial barriers. However, a lot of states said fooey on that, and they implemented Jim Crow laws, poll taxes, reading taxes, and so forth, voter suppression, and some of that kind of thing people still want to try to do today to try to control the vote. Then 1910, the state of Washington amended the state's constitution to allow women to vote and run for office, and that's 10 years before the 19th Amendment of the U.S. Constitution that ratified and gave women the right to vote nationwide. So some states were a little more progressive than others. 1924, so now you get to what happened to Native Americans. It was called the Indian Citizenship Act in 1924. Now, we had just fought World War I, by the way, and that was when Native Americans were given the right to vote and citizenship in this country. So that was up to 1924. Very little happened. Very little happened until the Civil Rights Act and all of the energy that went on back in the early 60s. In 1964, the Federal Civil Rights Act ensured all men and women aged 21 and older, regardless of race, religion, or education, have the right to vote. That was the 24th Amendment to the Constitution, 1964. That's a long time. In 65, now as the Civil Rights Act was in 64, in 65, as a result of Selma, if you remember the movie, the Federal Voting Rights Act suspends literacy tests Registration and voting rights are now federally enforced. In other words, all of that voter suppression stuff was eliminated in 1965. Well, we're not done yet because the country is not perfect. Still not perfect, but we're on a journey, right? We're on a journey. So 1971, the 26th Amendment, there's another amendment, lowered the voting age to 18. Now, amendments are hard to pass, right? They're not easy. They're not either pass and get ratified. But when they are, that means that the people in the country and the legislatures are totally behind it. And that means it was time. It was time to stop screwing with people about their right to vote. But that was 1971, right? Lower the voting age to 18. Vietnam was going on. So the mood was, well, if we can send people to die, we ought to let them vote. That was some of the argument. In 1975, the Voting Rights Act, the act is not an act is not an amendment. The Voting Rights Act is renewed, permanently banning literacy tests nationwide. So in other words, all that funny business in Jim Crow is permanently banned. And then Section 203 is added, requiring translating voting materials for those people that have a large percentage of English speaking skills. 1984 said, by the way, people with disabilities, you got to make accommodations for them. So that was 1984, and that was an act, not an amendment. Year 2000, that's Bush versus Gore, and the infamous Florida hanging Chad, pregnant Chad, bulging Chad ballot fiasco, because I lived in Florida at the time. The Supreme Court decided whether or not Florida's electoral votes would count or not. That was what they were deciding on. Because had that not happened, the decision, had the Supreme Court not ruled that way and said, yes, Florida's electoral votes count, then neither candidate would have had enough electoral college votes to become president. What happens then? Our Constitution says all bets are off. It goes to the House of Representatives, and they decide who the president is, and it may or may not be any of the people that we thought we were electing. That is the danger of stupidness, by the way. We do not ever want the House of Representatives, I don't care who's controlling it, we don't ever want them to be forced to make the decision on who the president of the United States is going to be, because that could get real ugly real fast. Because that means all of the people, you and I, are disenfranchised now because they get to decide. And the rules are different in the House. Not the Senate, the House. So that's the reason the Supreme Court decided. It went to the Supreme Court, and I'm very happy they made the decision, because I did not want to see the decision for President of the United States go to the House of Representatives. I don't even know who controlled the House at the time. I don't care. I don't ever want it to go that way. In 2008, well, let's not do that one. Let's talk about today. We have about 16 million people who have already voted early. That's another major thing. Voted early. That's unheard of. People are energized. I am not concerned that whichever way it goes, there's going to be civil war. There's going to be blood in the street. There's going to be people doing stupid. Correction. There will probably be some people somewhere doing stupid stuff. I am not concerned that the country is on the verge of civil collapse, or that I am absolutely not concerned about that. And I'll tell you why. There's a couple of reasons. One, this is a huge country geographically. And in order for really bad stuff to happen, the bad stuff needs to coalesce geographically in a concentration. And the country is just too damn big for that. The second is, whether we like to say it or not, we are not tribal. It is not our culture as Americans to be tribal in a sense that the tribe, the tribe is more important than the country. If anything, our tribe is being Americans. I'm cool with that. Our tribe is being Americans. So um, at the end of the day, that's what it comes down to. Now, some people say, well, I'm an American and you're not, to somebody. That conversation tends to go away very quickly, very quickly. Um, so it's election day. I'm excited. I'm excited. I'm excited because the country's energized. I'm excited because there's a lot of energy put in by a lot of people to get where we are. I'm excited because we've been doing this for 230 some odd years and the country hasn't collapsed yet. And we got a long way to go to perfection. I'm just saying. So if you haven't voted, go do that. If you have voted, go take a chill pill. Watch the results if you like. Me, I'm not. I'm gonna go to sleep like a baby, wake up and see what happens in the morning. All right. Y'all be good as always. Thanks for watching. Carry on.